back to the Leeds Lens as we do a slightly different video today. I want to talk about sort of where Leeds United are in the moment because there's been a lot of discussion over the last sort of 48 hours since the game against Burnley about where Leeds United are at, what Leeds United need to do to improve the current position. And I think we're going to talk about what Leeds United can do moving forward. We know the transfer window isn't here yet, so we can talk about the Gustavo Hamer link today, etc. But what can Leeds United do in this exact moment to make it better? Because I think at times, and I think at the time we're in at the moment, maybe going back to more of a basic route might be a method. I'm going to tell us how we can do that. I'm also going to look at some different potential tweaks that we could do in games, potential tactical tweaks, potential player selection tweaks, lots of different ways that I think we could improve the current climate of Leeds United. Not that they're all going to work and not that it's all going to be fantastic, but at least it's something different and it's something that we can actually do that should improve the situation at Leeds United. But let's talk about something to start with, because I think where Leeds United are at this moment in time is a slight problem. I think it is. I think that we're obviously the points are not horrendous. We've had 8 points in 8 games. Yes, we're not in the bottom 3 yet. If Brentford lose tonight, we'll still be above them as well. And everyone's sort of talking about Keith Andrews not doing too bad of a job at Brentford. So I think there's context to be applied at times. But we've obviously come off a terrible result the weekend against Burnley, losing the game 2-0, and I think we do need a new strategy, I look at the players at the moment and they look a bit lost, and I think we do need a new vision. I think we do need a new impetus into this team to sort of help us through the next few games and get us, but hopefully, a better result in the West Ham game, which now is looking more and more like a must not lose really, and probably a must win if we're being totally honest, based on what happened in the Burnley game. So that is what today's going to be. Today's video is all going to be about really. What can Leeds United do to improve the current situation? So I'm going to start by talking. There's a few different areas I want to talk about. Obviously, we want to talk about sort of potential lineup changes. I want to talk about formation changes, and I actually want to start with all of this combined and sort of talk about something that I haven't really mentioned yet, but I think is becoming a big issue at Leeds United, and it's the goals. I think we started the season, and when I look at how we were picking up points earlier in the season, it was being rock solid at the back, getting the odd goal, and winning games that way. I look at the Everton game in the first game. I look at the Fulham game where we're so close to nicking a point by just keeping it tight. I look at the Newcastle game, again, kept it tight, managed to get a draw. And I think we've seen in recent weeks a different approach to Leeds United. Like, I think we've got people in the fan base, and we've got pundits outside the fan base as well, who are sort of obsessed with the idea that Daniel Farke is too attacking he's too defensive all the time, constantly. Well, I actually think what has ended up happening at Leeds United, and I look back at sort of certain games, and I was looking back today at sort of when this all started and when we started conceding more goals, and it does actually come after the Wolves game. And I think what happened is we started the season in a position where Daniel Farke was so scared to attack that we didn't really do it. I think you saw that in the Everton game. Yes, in the first half we high pressed, but I think in the second half we sat in and almost played for a draw and ended up getting a goal late on in the end. That's how I felt the game went, and people are up in interpretations. Obviously, the Arsenal game we throbbed in. Then we played Newcastle, again, a really sort of defensive, disciplined performance. Got a 0-0, went to Fulham, didn't really attack again. I know we had a little chance in the first half, long stuff at the bar, but for the most part it was defensive. But then I think what happened is we went into the Wolves game, and something drastically changed. In the Wolves game, we couldn't just play this defensive stability game that we played in previous games, because we went 1-0 down in a game actually we desperately need to go back into. And what we ended up seeing in that Wolves game, particularly for about 15-20 minutes, a bit longer in that first half when we scored them 3 goals, is Leeds United adopting a completely different strategy and actually going for the game and taking it to Wolves. And I think what Daniel Farke comes out of that game looking at is going, actually, when we took it to a team, we ended up scoring 3 goals and winning the game. But what we forget in that moment is Wolves had a number of chances in sort of transition in that period when we scored the 3 goals to actually score themselves. We just got on the inside of it. Stack scored a worldie. We nicked the ball high up for the Okafor goal. Stack played him in, obviously from a poor pass from Agbadou. Calvert-Lewin scored a great header. But in context, there was chances for Wolves. We opened up the whole game. But I think then what happened is we go into the Bournemouth game, and Daniel Farke, takes a different approach then. We don't go really defensive like we saw in the Newcastle game. Like the Newcastle game and the Bournemouth game as differences are completely different in the way we actually approach the game. I don't think we were really defensive in the Bournemouth game at all, in my opinion. I thought we took it straight to them from the starting whistle. I mean, we nearly scored within the first 30 seconds with Calvert-Lewin, of course, who with a better shot would have scored the goal. And then, of course, we find ourselves 1-0 down again, and then we've got to press the game again. But I think after that Wolves game, Daniel Farke had a realisation that actually we don't need to play so defensive to get results in this league. And actually, if we go on the front foot, we're not as scared of the opposition when we actually can damage the opposition. And I think that's what we saw in the game. And then obviously the Bournemouth game, we get a draw, and it looks okay. We concede right at the end and give up points there. But for the most part, I think the performance level was good in my opinion. Then we go into the Spurs game, similar sort of story, but come out against it. And then you go into the Burnley game. And I think at that point, you've actually only picked up 1 point in 2 games. Yes, you've looked okay, but you've only picked up 1 point in 2 games. And you've got to go a bit back to basics. You've got to go, right, we have now conceded 4 goals in 2 games, playing this a more attacking brand of football. Do we need to drop it a bit? And do we need to go a bit more defensive? And let's go to Burnley and make sure we don't concede. And people are not going to like this. And I know we've got people in the chat that are going to absolutely sort of adamantly despise what I'm about to say. But the point of it is, go to Burnley, don't concede a goal. You don't concede a goal with the attacking quality at times we've got, or a set piece, we can score a goal and win the game. And we didn't see that. Again, we went sort of heavy metal. I see, not heavy metal, but we went for it and we conceded a goal from a poor defensive player. Although I must admit, I don't think there was loads of chance in the Burnley game. In fact, if you look back at XG, they only had 4 shots all game, 0.45 XG, only had 1 big chance. So it wasn't awful defensively at all. But I think that was more the way that Burnley played the game as opposed to Leeds being fantastic defensively. But I think we saw a switch. And I think I look at it now and think, We've had that Wolves game. We got it over the line. We've went more attacking in the sort of Bournemouth game, in the Spurs game, and we've sort of gone. I wonder if we've gone a bit too far now because we've conceded 6 goals in the last 3 games, 2 goals a game. You're not going to win many games of football when you're conceding on average 2 goals a game. So I wonder if we've got to tilt the scales a bit more. Like I was watching Monday Night Football today, and Jamie Carragher and sort of. Gary O'Neill were talking about Leeds United actually playing out from the back against Burnley as well, and it actually forcing the first goal to happen. Do we need to go a bit more back to the sort of thing we saw in the Newcastle game, where we went a bit more long at the time and got people in and around it to pick up second balls rather than playing out from the back? Is this something we need to do? I think we probably do, because I think we can't go and lose again against West Ham. Keep it tight. And then at Ellen Road, you'd expect Leeds United to score a goal no matter how they play. So keep it tight and then don't concede against West Ham and start building that clean sheet rapport up again, because we've got to get clean sheets, especially at home. We have got to be more rock solid at getting clean sheets, because as I said, the last 2 games at home, we've conceded 2 goals in both games. It can't keep happening. And then you look further at this, and I was looking at LUFC data, so congratulations to him for today. But he was saying today, if you saw his tweet, that Leeds United have gone 1-0 down in every single game, or haven't scored the first goal since the first game of the season now. We haven't scored the first goal since the first game of the season. So since the 18th of August, Leeds United have not scored the first goal in any game. Now, there wasn't any goals in the Newcastle game, but we didn't score the first goal. Then you look at Sheffield Wednesday, went behind in that game, Arsenal behind in that game, Fulham behind in that game, Bournemouth behind in that game, Wolves behind in that game. Spurs, every single one we went behind in. You can't keep going 1-0 down in the Premier League and expecting to get results, which is why I think we've got to be a bit more tighter at the back, in my personal opinion, and we've got to be a bit more rigid. And I look at sort of personnel changes to do that. And this is the team that started the weekend, and then we'll talk about how we're going to change it now. But one thing I want to talk about on a tactical basis when we talk about keeping it more tight is actually utilising the long ball a lot more than we have done in recent weeks. As I said, we conceded the first goal at Burnley. Yes, it was poor defending, and yes, Walker put a great ball in, and yes, there was a 2 versus 1 when the throw-in comes in, which allowed Walker to have so much time to obviously deliver the cross. But again, it comes actually from Leeds United playing out from the back. If Darlow plays a long ball, the ball doesn't go out for a throw-in, and that doesn't happen. So do we need to go a bit more long ballish? And I look at sort of what they were analysing the Man United game on Monday Night Football, which is sort of where I got inspiration a bit from this. But they're analysing the and I'll get into the comments in a second, Jaguar, as well. But they're analysing the game on Monday Night Football and talking about actually what Scum did well at Liverpool at the weekend, and it was about playing the long ball at times when you're not the best team. And I look at sort of what Leeds United can do now. If I get the team graphic up, what we need to do, this is the team that started the weekend, is sometimes when this ball goes in long into Calvert-Lewin here, we've got to get Harrison. This is what we did really well at the start of the season, and especially I think the Newcastle game, we were fantastic at this. You've got to get Aronson and Harrison in tight and get Longstaff and Stack pushing up. So when this ball breaks down from Calvert-Lewin, we're not trying to flick it on, which is what Amorim and Man United didn't try to do. I'm not saying we're going to copy their tactics, for goodness sake, but what you need to do is get Calvert-Lewin knocking it back into this zone here, and then get Longstaff, Harrison, and close to Calvert-Lewin, and pick up this second ball and go straight at him. And we saw in the Newcastle game, yes, we didn't create loads of chances against Newcastle, but it was more that when we picked the ball up here, we got it out wide to Aronson, and he just completely sliced it into touch or miscontrol it. And it was a lack of individual quality when we picked the ball up in this area, as opposed to actually Leeds United being really, really bad and not creating anything from actually going long. It was a lack of individual quality that cost us, which will be a problem at times, especially if we've got to play this front three again. That will be an issue. But hopefully we'll have Okafor and of course... and of course, Nonto potentially back for this game, which could help with that. But I do think, against West Ham, for me, go a bit back to basics. We don't have to play out from the back. Go long at times. Hit your big man. Calvert-Lewin's there to do that. Get the knockdown, and then we'll go straight out from that way, and we'll stop the onslaught of attacks on our goal, because we can't keep, as I said, we can't keep going 1-0 down, and we definitely cannot keep conceding 2 goals in every single game, because you're not going to pick up results, because we know Leeds United's strength is not their attack at this moment in time. We don't have loads of quality in the attacking third. We saw that at the weekend, and we're going to see that throughout the rest of the season. So we've got to make sure we build from the back and we are defensively solid, because we have gone away from that in recent weeks. As I said, the goals speak for themselves. It's been 6 goals in the last 3 games, and this is actually something that Daniel Farke referred to as well. So I won't be surprised if this tactical tweak does occur. Jaguar still says Stack needs to be dropped for West Ham. Tanaka needs to come in. Also, James and Nonto need to start. Well, interesting, because I think Okafor hopefully will be back as well. And if he is, then he could be. Jaguar still says, think it's going to be pretty toxic at Ellen Road. It depends on the result, doesn't it? It's not going to be toxic before the game. I think if Leeds United are 2-0 down at half-time, it could be a bit toxic. I don't think they'll turn actually on the West Ham game personally, but it could do. Also, Strout needs to be dropping for Bijol. Yeah, we'll get on to sort of the personnel changes. But I wanted to talk first about how tactically we could set up, because it's not just about obviously I would tactically set up like this regardless of the personnel. I think we've just got. I think it's yes. I would probably drop Strout for BL, and we'll talk about that later in the video. But fundamentally, we've got to get a bit more back to basics, in my opinion, and stop the onslaught of goals going in. I see everyone has their... I can't repeat that word, but everyone has their... is pooing themselves. We are all expected to lose games. The fan base heads certain games we expect to win. Football doesn't work like that. No, you're absolutely right, Mr. Whiteside. You're absolutely right. Because the thing is, we were saying about this, I think, on yesterday's show. The reason I was so disappointed in the Bournemouth game was because actually the Bournemouth game, had we won that game against Bournemouth, it would have probably made up a bit for the loss at Burnley. Because you go, well, we get 3 points there against a team maybe we wouldn't expect to do. And then, all right, we've lost at Burnley, which is pretty crap. But at least we've made up points from elsewhere. Because you're not going to, as you said, Mr. Whitesnake, we're not going to beat Burnley home and away. And we haven't done that now anyway. We're not going to beat Sunderland home and away, Wolves home. Like, all these teams where you go bank a point, you are going to slip up. You'll have a man sent off. You'll concede a crap goal like we did at the weekend. It won't quite fall for you. You're not going to beat all these teams. So it's important that you pick up points in and around that as well. Like, obviously, in the next few weeks, we've got West Ham, then we've got Brighton away, then we've got Forest, and then we've got a really bad run of games. We've got like Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City, I think a few other teams all on the spin, and it looks like a horrendous run. But Leeds United, when we play Chelsea at home, we've got to be trying to get points in these games. They're not just complete free hits, especially at Ellen Road. Anybody at Ellen Road, I will argue, maybe outside of Arsenal, because they're going to be so difficult because of the way they play and how defensively good they are and how strong they are in set pieces. I think that's going to be a challenge. But everyone else at home, I think, are vulnerable, and you can get every single team. I think Man City are vulnerable. They only lost 1-0 to Brentford. Only lost 1-0 to them, and I think if we can score goals, and I think Brentford weren't that great in that game. Liverpool, we know at this moment, are not in a great run of form. Chelsea, we know, can be inconsistent. We can't just go, oh, we're just going to lose 5 on trot, because you also can't do that. It's terrible for team morale. So I completely agree, Mr. Whitesnake. We've got to pick up points. We can't just go Burnley's 3 points, Sunderland's 3 points, because also Sunderland have had a good start as well, to be fair to them. Agree, but do you think, do I think Farke will change anything? This is where it's interesting, because we'll move on to what I would do now, and then we'll talk sort of about what Farke will do. So this is the team that obviously we picked against Burnley. I didn't like this team when we kicked off. I didn't enjoy this team. Now, obviously that can work, and I haven't got team selections right the whole time so far with what's worked and what hasn't. But I didn't like this team. I thought this was the wrong team to pick at the weekend. That was my personal opinion. When I saw the lineup, I thought that is wrong. I actually understood the front three because I wanted to play 4-2-3-1 regardless, and I would still do that in the recent game. I wouldn't go to a back five, which we've talked about enough on this channel. We won't go into too much because it basically leaves you exposed elsewhere if you do that. So I understood why Aronson and Harrison actually played on the wings. I hated it, but I understood it. I think that Aronson-Harrison thing are not massively a Daniel Farke issue, but actually more a board issue. The fact that we've actually ended up with this. Daniel Farke didn't do all the recruitment. He didn't provide the money. He didn't decide not to sell certain players at times. So yes, Harrison and Aronson were playing, and that was awful. But that for me, that's more down to a lack of recruitment in the final third, as opposed to Farke doing a load of things wrong. What I would have done differently at the weekend, and I would still do it now, is I agree. I think Stack comes out for me now. I think Stack comes out. Now, the reason Stack comes out rather than Longstaff is, I think if you bring in Tanaka in, we still want the physicality in the midfield. And I think sort of sweeping the game up and being at a cover distance all over the pitch, Longstaff is better than that than Stack. So when I look at sort of, I think Stack's the most hybrid midfielder we've got, where he's quite decent defensively, can get about the pitch. I know he didn't for obviously the second goal at the weekend, but for the most part can get around the pitch. But he also offers a bit of an attacking threat, and he's created quite a few chances. I think Tanaka's more in terms of on the ball work, and he can sort of take the ball off the back four, dictate the play, find that nice pass, and he's got the best IQ of anyone in the team, the best touch in the team, and for me, the person that can see the best passes in the team, Tanaka. So he's a different profile to Stack, but Stack's got that in a bit. But Longstaff and Tanaka together, actually, I think as a two, I think Ampadu's always going to play the 6 for me because he is a number 6 by trade, and we need him in the team. You've got to play your captain, I think. So Ampadu doesn't come out. So then it's about these two. And I think when I'm looking at a balance, if you are going to play Tanaka in there, I would like to play Longstaff in with him because I think he can help him out with getting around the pitch and almost being that extra body off the ball to be running around like a madman, intercepting it like we see Longstaff do so well, where Stack's nowhere near as good at getting around the pitch as Longstaff is. So I think this is the midfield I would pick. And yes, I do think actually Stack is better on the ball than Longstaff, but I think, as I said, what I've mentioned with Tanaka is you've got that player that's really good on the ball in Tanaka, so you can actually, for me, have Longstaff as well as someone that would work quite well. I also think we are at a point now where Strout comes out of the team and Bijol comes in at centre-half. I've been saying it for weeks. We've paid £18 million for a centre-half and we're not playing him. And apparently Strout wasn't good enough in the summer because otherwise we wouldn't have bought Bijol. We wouldn't have bought a starting left-sided centre-half if we thought Strout was good enough, in my opinion. So why is he now good enough after in the summer we decided he wasn't and went recruitment? I don't really get that. And also I do think we're seeing the same issues with Strout that we have for a while now, in my personal opinion. Not that he's been totally awful, but I think the problem with Strout, and this has been his problem since forevermore, is that for someone who's 6'4" and built like a bit of a brick, he's never that physical. He never uses physical presence for me in a ridiculously good way or a good way at all. He never looks like, he doesn't look like someone who's 6'4" like me. He almost looks like when it's on the deck, he acts as if he's like 5'9". Like he's not aggressive enough, and he never has been. And this has been. And yes, his mistakes have not been horrendous. He's not made loads of howling errors. But it's just been these consistent mistakes for me of lacking aggression in games when you need it in a centre-half. And I think it's his main issue. And I look at the goals we conceded against Spurs. Both of them, he should, for me, get closer to him before he shoots. And I look at this, and it's just the continuous mistakes of not being aggressive enough off the ball. And we've seen it for years on years on years. It was the same under Bielsa for me with Pascal Strout. Brilliant on the ball. I know he made a mistake for the goal at the weekend on the ball, but for the most part, he's good on the ball. But he's lacked his physicality off it, which has always surprised me because actually in the box, heading the ball, Pascal Strout's really dangerous, especially on attacking set pieces. He's actually better than Rodon, in my opinion, actually winning headers. He hasn't been in recent games, but for the most part, he has been, Pascal Strout. But he's just defensively, for me, he's just too passive. He's just always too passive. And I look at Bijol, he's a complete different. And this might cause us problems in itself. But I think Bijol has to come in now because I think you need a bit of a shake-up in defence. As I said, it's not like the defence is doing that well anymore. We've conceded 6 goals in the last 3 games, so something's got to give. So I would go with Bijol at centre-half. I would also move Darlow to Perri. Now, obviously, the difference between Darlow and Perri, the most noticeable difference, is, of course, the kicking. The kicking is something that Darlow is a better kicker subjectively than Perri. They even showed a stat on Sky Sports tonight that I think his passing accuracy is much better than Darlow's. But what they did say is that with Perri, we do a lot more long passes because he's not as good a kicker. And for me, as I talked about when I talked about the tactics, the way we should play against West Ham is go long at times, is go longer a lot more than we have been doing in recent weeks. So if we are going to go long anyway, why not pick Perri? And I think Perry's better at his sort of handling. I think he's probably a better actual goalkeeper in terms of his goalkeeping actions than Darlow as well. So I would go with Perri in goal. And again, we've also paid 18 or 15 million, rising I think to 18 million for Perri in goal. So if we're paying that fee for Perri because we deem Darlow not to be good enough to be a number one starter, a bit like Bijol, we need to get him in the team now, don't we? And we've got an option there. So I would freshen it up now and Perri would come back in the team for me. That's what I do in defence. As I said, Tanaka in the midfield, Bijol in the midfield. So there are 3 changes. And then, of course, when you go into the front line, if depending on who's fit, I think if everybody's fit, in my personal opinion, the front 3 I would like to see, if everybody's at full fitness, Aronson obviously comes out, Harrison comes out, and I would like Okafor on the left-hand side. Where's Harrison? I would like Okafor on the left, and I would like, where is he? Let's go get him. And I would like Wilfred Gnonto on the right-hand side. That's Gruev, you absolute plonker. There we are. That's the team I would like to see at the against West Ham at this moment in time. I think this offers a lot more in an attacking threat in Okafor and Gnonto. I think they are our best wide players in terms of technically and in terms of an attacking threat. Yes, potentially Gnonto doesn't offer the defensive work rate that an Aronson does or even a Dan James does. But I do think when you're playing at home at times, you've got to be a bit more aggressive and a bit more attacking. So I would go Gnonto and Okafor as the 2 wingers, in my personal opinion. I think we can really get at them with these wingers, and I think they can cause. West Ham huge issues. So that would be the team I go with. I don't think he'll do this. I also don't think Okafor and Gnonto will both be ready to start. So I think he will. I actually think there's a chance. I think there's a chance that Dan James starts on the right hand side. But I definitely think that Brendan Aronson or Harrison will play, because I don't think he'll deem that Okafor or Gnonto are quite ready to start yet, in my personal opinion. So if one of them 2 has to play, which is not ideal, but if one of them has to play, I would actually pick Jack Harrison. I think subjectively, Jack Harrison is a better winger than Aronson, in my personal opinion. I think even in terms of his crossing ability, even his ball striking in general, really, I think he is a better option personally than Brendan Aronson. So if it's what we expect on who's fit and who can actually play the 90 minutes, that would be my team that I would go for West Ham. That would be my side. Anyway, let's have a look. Let's have a quick look at some of your guys' comments. Tanaka and Longstaff, a bit like Tanaka and Rothwell, and I'd like to see that. I actually disagree with that. I saw that on Twitter. I think Oscar say it on Twitter as well. I disagree. I don't think Rothwell is like Longstaff at all. I think Rothwell was much more of a ball player and a ball progressor, like Tanaka. Actually, I think what you did get from Rothwell was his ability to run through the midfield, which I don't think Longstaff has. But I think Longstaff's better off the ball. I think his pressing is miles better than Rothwell. I actually think they're quite different profiles personally. I was surprised that Oscar said that. And obviously, I'm quite surprised you said that as well. But that obviously it's interpretation. But that's my feeling. Thing is, okay, we should have got something against Bournemouth, but Leeds should have got something at Spurs, Fulham as well. Yeah, we should have done. But again, the Fulham game was more of the defensive capacity. And there's also a massive difference between Leeds United should be able to get something and actually getting something, of course, as you well know, Jaguar. We shouldn't have, if we're being honest, fundamentally, we shouldn't have lost the game at the weekend. If we're being totally honest, if you look at all the underlying data, we've had 20 shots, 4 big chances. Bogle's missed an open goal. Arison's missed a really good chance. They've scored a worldie, we've sort of we've turned off on a set piece, and they've had 4 shots, and we've had 20 all game. So we probably shouldn't have lost at the weekend, if we're being honest. But we can't. There's not enough games where we can keep saying that we lost based on this. So yeah, I think that's the way of looking at it. Strauch has got a lot of pace, but stands off too much. Yeah, he does. That's his issue, and that will continue to be his issue. As I said, if it was just an individual error in one game, I could understand it more. But it's the consistency of that mistake being the case that I think puts me off with Pascal Strauch. Farke needs to change some players and mix it up, create competition for places in the starting 11. Yeah, I agree. And none of this talk about players haven't played enough together stuff. Well, fundamentally, they haven't. I think you look at Liverpool and sort of how they're failing at this moment in time. They bought probably the best striker in the league last year, and he's that. They bought Wirtz, who was fantastic at Leverkusen, etc. And it's not quite working for them because you can't beat continuity in your team at times. the way that we had with Bogle and James on the wing last year, it's going to take a while for Okafor and Goodmanson to have that link up naturally, because it takes time to build these patterns of play, and it takes time of understanding of when I'm going to make an inverted run and when I'm going to make an overload on the outside. That these things take time to do, so naturally continuity is something to bear in mind. As I said, Liverpool won the league last year, and these are the best players in the world doing this, by the way. So continuity is going to be a thing naturally. I think it's actually one of Leeds United's strengths. Like, we've had a lot of players that have actually been able to make the step up to the Premier League so far, the likes of Rodons, Ampadu's, Bogles, etc., to keep the continuity. Tanaka as well, in my opinion. I know we haven't seen it much, but he should be in that mould as well, in my opinion. So I think that's been a huge benefit to Leeds United, actually, the continuity. But I do think it's important. Mr. White said, yeah, trouble is, Farke won't change anything. That's my worry. I actually think he will. I think he will on Friday. I don't buy... He might not, but I think he will change on Friday. I'd be surprised to see Tanaka not in the team on Friday. I would be surprised not to see Perri in goal probably on Friday as well. I'm not 100% sure Bijol versus Strauch, if I'm being honest. I'm not sure on that one. And I think if he can get one of the... I think he will take Harrison out, and I think leave Harrison in if he has to. I think if we can get one of them in, he probably will. Yeah, agreed, mate. Liverpool are different gravy, aren't they? We're also, Easy's mentioned about Daniel Farke. I will talk about Daniel Farke, but not at this exact moment. I will talk about it later in the show. But that is where I'm at with this current team. I think we've got to slightly start tweaking the team, in my opinion, because... We're just tweaking it slightly wrong at the moment. It's not bang on. Well, I hope so, Leeds Lens. In terms of... I'm not sure what in terms of reference that is. Liverpool are different gravy, aren't they? Yeah. Not at the moment. But yeah, that is the side that I would select for Friday. I'm interested again. If you know what, obviously we've got comments in for live, Mr. Whitesnick, Jaguar Skills, etc. Which, if you do want to be live on these, obviously we always talk about it's 8 PM on every single day, basically 8 PM. So be there for that. But if you can't be, obviously we know a lot of you watch after the show, so more than welcome to leave a comment, and I try to respond to most of them. I've had so many Burnley fans messaging me over the last few days, though. So if you are a Burnley fan, you know, you probably didn't get a response, because I'm sick of you saying that, just not watching the whole video, which is what happened at the weekend. Easy says, I don't even worry about the results anymore. I'm just waiting for Farke to be sacked. I hate that mentality, because you're not spotting Leeds United, are you? Like, we all want Leeds United to win, don't we? Like, look, Easy's a Leeds United fan, of course he is, but wanting Leeds United to lose, you're not saying that, to be fair, so I don't know what I'm on about. Yeah, Mr. Whitesnake, I was talking about Farke changing for Friday, mate. Okay, yeah. All right, I'm on to you now. So let's talk about Daniel Farke anyway. Let's talk about Daniel Farke. Let's go back to this page as well. I think people are sick of seeing Daniel Farke, so we'll just go back to this screen rather than picking him up. Daniel Farke is an interesting one at this moment, innit? Because we've got a problem where he's just not... How do I explain this? I think where I'm at with Daniel Farke, and I will be constant with this, I get why people want him out. I actually genuinely do. I think people have not wanted him for a while. I think more... say if Daniel Farke was appointed this summer, say if he'd been appointed this summer, I don't think people would be wanting him out. I think it's what they saw in the Championship and the way he approached potentially away games and stuff like that in the Championship that are really winding people up. Like, I remember the Blackburns away last year, which was horrendous. I was nearly Farke out at that moment because it was just so frustrating, losing games 1-0 away from home where we couldn't break teams down. So I get it, and I think that's obviously what's playing into the Daniel Farke stuff. My only thing has been that they just won't sack him at this moment, and I get the conversation. I get why people are frustrated, because the results now, like, we've just lost to a team that, for me, are going to finish 20th in the league. So I get the frustration, and it's the continuous of, like, not taking accountability in press conferences, picking the same team religiously, not doing the changes that the fan base want, almost coming across stubborn. But every manager's stubborn, but that's what he's been doing. So I do get the conversation. And I think the other thing that people are frustrated with at this moment, and I understand this, actually. Again, I understand this. I'm not, like, I support Leeds United. If Daniel Farke doesn't work at Leeds United, let's move on and get someone that will work. I have no issue with doing that. Well, I'm a Leeds United fan at heart. I loved Marcel Bielsa. It was almost a different story. I was obsessed with Bielsa. I never wanted him sacked in a million years. And I'd have probably gone down with him, which might sound mad to people. But that was my attachment with Bielsa. I don't have that with Daniel Farke. I never have done. He doesn't capture me like Bielsa did. And I think it's the same with the fan base, because people, for what actually Daniel Farke has achieved in this club and actually getting Leeds United promoted, which regardless of what people think about oh, we had the best squad in the league, etc., etc. It doesn't always matter. Look at the teams this year in the Championship. Southampton are nowhere near getting automatics at this moment. Ipswich are nowhere near getting it. And Leicester have, I think, drawn 5 of the last 6 games, with, for me, the best squad in the league. So just because you've got the best squad in the league doesn't automatically mean you're going to get promoted. I mean, look at League One at this moment. Luton are about 14th. With the best squad in the league, in my opinion. Huddersfield can't win a game to save their life as well. So just because you've got the best team in the league doesn't mean that you actually are going to get promoted. So we've got to accept that Daniel Farke did a good job getting us promoted. But I think it's impressive from Daniel Farke's point of view that he's managed to get Leeds United promoted, but still the fan base are not like massively behind him. Because usually when a team gets promoted, naturally, because of what he's achieved for the fan base and what he's achieved for Leeds United, they give him a bit more credit in the Premier League and they let him go a bit longer without sort of trying to fire the nail in so hard like we've seen with Daniel Farke, where people are just ready to go on him straight away. And I think this is because he just doesn't come across as me as a massively likeable person. Maybe other people see this, but I think the reason it speaks volumes to me that we've got 8 points in our first 8 games, which is not fantastic, but it's not like hideous in my personal opinion. And this is a guy that's got 100 points, won the league last year, and still people are desperate to get him out. And we've got 40% of the fan base that want him out. That speaks volume as to the fact that he hasn't built up a connection, in my opinion, with the fan base, like a Bielsa or even a Labrie has done at sort of Sunderland. He hasn't done that. And it's because I think it's the way he comes across in sort of press conferences at times, and it's the way that we feel like we've seen the same patterns with him. I just don't. I think if I'm looking at Daniel Farke now, and Daniel Farke after this, say if he does end up losing his job at Leeds, I would have massive questions. And if I was in his team, I'd be saying, you need to find a way, Daniel, of even if you're getting good results, to actually build up more of a relationship with the fan base, because it just hasn't developed like it did with the Bielsa. Now, Bielsa was a different story, obviously, because we didn't have the best team in the league and we were in the dust, and he sort of brought us out. But it is impressive. That is mental. That the achievements that he's had at the club, to be so sort of disliked by such a portion of the fan base, is a bad sign. He's done something fundamentally wrong to be in that position, because it's such a common situation. It's the German way. I disagree, because you look at Klopp. Look at Klopp at Liverpool. He's German. He built up an unbelievable sort of relationship with the Liverpool fan base, to the point where he only actually won one Premier League and one Champions League in the 7 years he was there, but they absolutely adore him at Liverpool. So I don't think it's truly just because he's German. I just think it's because it's the mannerisms and the way he talks in press conferences at the time that's just put the fan base off. I'm not massively included. Like, I'm not obsessed with Daniel like I was with Bielsa at all, but I don't think he should be sacked, because I don't think he's done enough wrong almost to be sacked, if that makes sense. But I do think that's impressive that he's had such achievements at Leeds United. Maybe part of the fan base have just not warranted the achievements. Maybe that's what it is. But I think fundamentally it's probably come from Daniel Farke, and he hasn't managed to get the Leeds fans to love him like you've seen with other managers at other clubs. And that can happen, but he's never quite fully gelled, I think, in my opinion. Let's have a look into some of your comments anyway. I was talking about Farke's for changing. No point having players. There are Leeds fans who didn't want Farke as soon as he took over. That is true. That is true. And I think that is true. But I would imagine most fans in the fan base give managers the benefit of the doubt, especially to start with. So it is just surprising. It's not surprising, but it's mad to me. Mr. Whiteside says Farke is not a personal person, unlike Reeve and Bielsa. And I think this is what it is. This is what I mean. These big characters, like, as I said, if Bielsa was on 8 points at this moment, no one in the fan base is saying get him out. Nobody is. And I think part of it obviously is the football as well. I think that's bearing in mind. But it is crazy. I think it is the German way. Okay. I think you've missed the context of the German way comment. Is it in the same of why England fans don't like Tuchel? Is that what I mean? It's as if Leeds fans are trying to manage the manager, but unfortunately we can't. I'm not fully sure what you mean there, is it? Think these next 3 games will decide Farke's future at Leeds. I agree. I think the next 3 are massive. I completely agree. I think if he lost all the next 3, I think if he lost all the next 3, I think you are talking about probably 75% of the fan base that are wanting him out at that moment. And I think you are starting to get it's spilling over a bit into the home. Of course, the next 2 games after this game are not a home game, and the away fans naturally always go later than the home fans, naturally, because the away fans are the lifeblood of any club they are. And they do usually back the manager and the sort of playing squad till the absolute death. I mean, they were losing 2-0 against Burnley and they were still cheering. I was there when we were losing 7-0 to Man City and they were still singing about him, about Leeds United. So that is the way away fans are. But if the away fans turn, like we saw on Jesse Marsh when it was Leicester away, it's gone. That's it. As soon as the fans go, for the most part, and you hear it in the ground, very rarely does it ever come back from that. It's gone. That is it. So yeah. Think these next 3 games... Yeah, I've read that one. Scott, you missed the context. Yeah, sorry about that. However, what I will say about Farke, finally, before we wrap this video up, is I think what some fans feel, which I think is fair enough, is that I think some fans have the opinion that maybe Farke hasn't done enough wrong yet, but it's not going to work, so let's move him on while we have the chance. Because that is one thing to bear in mind with this. And no one wants to see anyone lose a job, I don't think, for the most part. But I do think I think what people are worried about with Daniel Farke is if it gets to a point where we'll look really bad and we're in the relegation zone and we're, say, 5 points adrift in the relegation zone when he gets sacked, the available manager that will want to take the Leeds United job just drop dramatically. It does. That's what happens because they think, well, I don't want to manage in the Championship next year. I don't think I can get this team up now. I don't have enough chance. So I think what some Leeds fans are feeling is, if you are going to move the manager on, you've got to do it sooner rather than later. And that's sort of where I've been at, in terms of, I don't want to sack the manager, as I said, because I don't think he's done enough wrong. And I want to stick with him. And I can see it working in certain times. I can do. But I do get the opinion that if you are going to sack him, you better sack him, say, in the next few weeks than you are sacking him like April, when you don't have time for the new manager, we're rushing around all over the place and we don't get the right man in. Because I think what we did with Jesse Marsh, if we're being honest, if we look back at the last time we got relegated, is we waited too long, didn't we? That's what happened. We waited too long. He then got 2 results. He beat Bournemouth at home, beat Liverpool away, and it changed the complexion. And then he ended up staying for another 2 months and we didn't win another game. So we don't want to be in that position again, is the truth of it. And we waited too long on Marsh. I think part of what fans are worried about is that if we wait too long, we won't get the right manager because the manager won't want the job anymore. And we'll be in such a bad position that it'll be so much harder to overturn the deficit of what's actually happened in the situation. So I think that is something that the 49ers are going to have to bear in mind, because if half the fan base want him out and they wait until basically all the fan base want him out and then they sack him, it might be too late. I don't think we should sack him though at this moment, but I get why people want him. I really do. Jagger still says, well, after these 3 games, it's the international break. Yeah, exactly. That's why I think these next 3 games are massive for his future. And we also saw, by the way, I think, was it a Football Insider? No, it was Sky Sports actually said this. It's probably more deemable. But they didn't want to give Daniel Farke a new contract at this moment because they want to see how results go. And they will make a decision on that. So I think they would sack him. I think they would. And I also am not worried. Like, we had a comment today about sort of what if Leeds United do sack Daniel Farke, who did they get? I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about that. I'm convinced that the 49ers will have known in the summer, as we know, that Daniel Farke might end up getting sacked at some point this year. And they're mad if they didn't think that. Because they should be doing that with every manager. Every single manager should have a manager lined up in case it goes wrong. Should be talking to managers all the time. That's what top clubs do. And that's what every Premier League club will do. And Leeds United will have done this. Because Leeds United will know at some point it might go wrong with Daniel Farke and you need a replacement lined up. So I'm not worried that there won't be a manager available at this moment for Leeds United. If it's who we all want, I don't know. But I will convince that they will have been talking to managers for 100%. So I'm not worried about managers being lined up in my personal opinion with Leeds United at this moment. I'm not worried about that at all, really. I think that they will have something sorted, because if they don't, then they're idiots. Then they are actually idiots, and they're not. So I'm not worried about that. I just think that overall, it's just about making the decision at the right time and what's deemed fair. Easy says, Farke is very timid and I'll never get used to his humble ways. Fair enough. I think you're never going to lie. I don't think... Daniel Farke is the character he is. And I think Easy's never going to gel with Farke. Sebastian says, Leeds is too predictable. Why is it so complicated for DF to change his formation system against Burnley? It was the perfect opportunity to start with Perrault instead of Harrison or Aronson. So in terms of... Well, then, are you playing sort of a more inverted system, almost like Marsh did, where you're playing it more narrow? Because if you are going to do that, then maybe Pro would work. But yeah, I don't know. Mr. Whitesnake says, do you have my room bugged? I have a video coming out on what you just said about facts. We agree then. That's impressive. Sorry, just jump in. Yeah, no worries, Sebastian. Anyway, I have been going for 35 minutes. What's the West Ham score? Let's have a look. Is it still 0-0? Still 0-0. But yeah, thanks all for watching as always. Obviously, we will be back tomorrow at 8 p.m. Probably finding a way to talk about Daniel Farke again. Easy, he'll probably spread his hate for Farke, so we might get into it again. But thanks all for watching. I've really enjoyed tonight's show. We've done a bit longer than usual as well because we just seemed to got into it. So there you are. Anyway, thanks all for watching, and